and Trevor Higgins from Naperville Central. Great. Thank you again to all of our students who helped us make this Focus 203 one of our best ever. Again, if their parents or friends would like to come into this area to take a picture of our group of students, you're more than welcome to do so. Thank you.
Okay. For those who want to leave, you can leave. I see you're already leaving. That's good. We're to the public comment session of the meeting. I don't have any cards in front of me, but is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the board? Be 3 minutes for an individual, 5 minutes for a group. Okay, very good. All right, before we move into communications, Donna Wanke is available by phone, so I need a motion from the board in a second to allow her to enter the meeting.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Fitzgerald. Aye. Fielden.
Yes.
Romberg. I'm sorry, Yench.
Aye.
Crotty. Yes. Price.
Yes.
Hi, Donna. We're in section 6. We're about to begin student ambassador reports.
Thank you.
Okay, you guys are up. Who's first?
So for a sports update, we already talked about our cross-country team, but they placed second in IHSA with Judy Pendergast leading. We also had 6 girls swimmers qualify for state this past week. In honor of Veterans Day, we had a ceremony on Monday during the school day. On November 4th, we had our National Honor Society induction. Although I don't have the exact numbers this meeting, I will get them to you guys as soon as possible on how many we had. Additionally, last week, our CTE Career Carnival was held, so a lot of people from different career paths came and talked to students during their classes. This week and last week, we've been having a Stop Bieber fundraiser throughout the hallway. So for our 2-minute passing period bell, Justin Bieber's Baby plays throughout the school day, and it's in trying to raise money for our Healthy Huskies Club, which is fundraising for our Chris Heron Purple Project sort of thing. Interestingly enough, the fundraiser has started a large social unrest, and there is a petition saying that this is extortion. So we're getting our students involved, I guess, which is always good, I guess. Additionally, many juniors have started to express concern that the ACT may not be held due to state funding, and it's replaced by the PARCC exam, I believe. So just noting that.
Tim, you want to speak to that?
Yes, actually we've been working with ACT as part of their program to bring it during the school day, and so on April 19th we have a contract that we're going to be working with the Board of Education bringing to them next month at the beginning to see if they'd be willing to have us have everyone take it if the state does not come through with their test. That would be during the park window, but it would be for juniors instead.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns.
I'd like to begin by mentioning that Naperville Central is having our annual Freshman Class Council food drive
It's taking place over this next week, and it encourages students to bring in food that will be donated to the local food pantry of loaves and fishes. In addition, we held our annual Veterans Day ceremony during the second hour last Wednesday. We recognized 10 veterans and 1 active service member from the Naperville Central community. In addition, because of the healing wall that was across the street from Naperville Central, many classes took the opportunity to go across the street during part or all of their class in order to remember the veterans who've served. In addition, we are having our National Honor Society inductions tomorrow. So those will be students who have been selected for their for being both good scholars, being good leaders, having good character, and having a commitment to service. In addition, Naperville Central held our annual blood drive, where many students took the opportunity to donate blood to their community. And then I'd also like to say, like at Naperville North, many juniors were concerned with the ACT, but now that we have a little bit more information about that, hopefully that will be resolved. In addition, Naperville Central had 2 of its BPA members be elected to the state office. So that was.
Very good, thank you. All right, inside the board docs is a series of written communications, FOIAs that were submitted to the district. Superintendent, staff school reports.
Our first report is an update on enrollment in District 203. You have the current enrollment information that we have dated October 30th, 2015 provided for your review, and also just some observations about that. I'm going to turn it over to Kane Osborne, Bob Ross, and Kitty Ryan for any comments regarding the current state of enrollment in District 203 and plans for use with our enrollment projections.
Thank you, Mr. Bridges. Yeah, just a reminder, rather than go over all the details in the memo, that what we wanted to do was take the October 30th enrollment data and simply make sure, as we did for ourselves, put in the context of Dr. Coffrin's enrollment projections. He did provide an update over the summer. He did provide also a more comprehensive update as of last Tuesday, but that is such a larger piece of data to go through that we did not feel prepared to bring that forward, and we will do so in the future because it includes even more data than the July update. But I think, as you can see from the conclusions, we feel overall that our current enrollment data as of October 30th is within ranges of Dr. Coffrin's projections that make us feel confident about those projections at this point in time. There are certainly some schools that are slightly above or below projections, but Dr. Coffrin's data is really designed for higher level on the whole and longer term planning. We do use it as an additional data point, and as time goes on, we look to use it more and more as that additional data point for things like certainly enrollment, but even staffing when appropriate. And I'll just conclude, one reason that is for instance, Dr. Coffrin's data does not include programmatic changes where students who might be living in one area are going to school in another. So that's a constant review that we have to do when we're looking at his data in relationship to our enrollment data.
Mr. Ross, I don't know if you can comment about, we just received news today about 2013 live birth data. Is that something that is not, we hope to be available soon, but will not now be available till January at the earliest, or?
That's correct. We're notified by the state, actually by Dr. Coffrin, who was notified by the state that although he had hoped to have that birth data provided by the state of Illinois by now, it is not yet available to us, and he doesn't expect that it will be till January at the earliest, which was disappointing.
Any other observations or comments, Bob or Kitty? Questions at this time from the board?
Kristen?
Thanks for the data, and also thank you for the memo, which I think helped to really put it in perspective in terms of the schools that are outside of the projections and the ones that are staying within it. When do you expect to have the additional report for the enrollment data that you've just received?
We just have to schedule it. We have a meeting already scheduled for ourselves to go over it. It takes some time. As you remember from his March report, it's quite extensive. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that we've fully vetted it ourselves, then reviewed it with Dr. Coffrin to confirm our understanding of that report before we would bring it to you.
Also,
so I don't have a date at this time.
I think the addition of the updated report adds another point of comparison on the projections. There had been 3 points.
Yeah.
Now there are 4. Is that enough data to be able to give a kind of a low and a high and 2 medium, 2 middle range projections?
And that was my other question is it, as you review it, would be the interesting I think would be interesting for us to know if it's more similar to any of those particular data points. Because they did vary quite a bit. Particularly the snapshot one was much different than some of the others in a couple different areas. So it would be interesting to me to find out what we're seeing in terms of the trends. It does seem like overall we are higher than the projection, correct?
Mm-hmm.
To some degree, not to a number that's alarmed us in any sense.
No.
Right.
So
No.
yeah.
Thank you.
Dan, can you remind me how we figure out the new move-ins? Because I just know, like, I see lots of little kids out again, or like, especially in my neighborhood, we have 8 new little boys that, didn't live there 2 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask for help from the team as well. But recently, we have reached out to the city to get more of a heads up on new developments that are coming in so that we can work to use some of Coffrin's model on like neighborhoods to have a prediction or an estimate of the number of kids that may come from development or from housing. And then there was another point I was going to make. I think that's
the only other place it comes out is in the early cohort roll-up data. So once the kindergarten and first grade cohort numbers start to show, we compare that to the birth rates, and we can see then that's where the differential would be in the move-ins, largely, not exclusively, but largely. But at that point, it's already in-house, so to speak.
That's why the update on the September 30th update and continuing to build our trend is going to help us be able to be better at predicting that by having more data in there.
So we don't ask parents at all to, stop by the school or register or fill out a form. I mean, I know they're excited a lot of people move here for the school, so they're excited to maybe get that first visit or something like that. Is that something? Because I know there's just so many new kids that there's no way you'd be able to capture the move-ins that way.
Kitty, do you want to speak to that? Yep.
Sure. I want to make sure my microphone's on. Yes, we have always had our kindergarten preview, which is a way that we recruit. We met, as a matter of fact, today to talk about some new ways to reach out to families, some different kinds of mailings that we want to use to really encourage people to jump on board, let us know that you're there. And we also work with our home and school associations, asking them to help us track new move-ins. But we encourage people. Our centralized enrollment office is open every single day, and we encourage people to call as soon as they move into the neighborhood so that we know who's new and who's coming.
That might be a nice piece for social media.
We talked about that today as well.
Yeah, to Susan's point, I remember when we had these initial discussions, that was one thing that was identified as something that Dr. Coffrin he can't predict what the real estate market is going to do, and I think the majority of us felt that as the real estate market recovered, that we were going to see this turnover, and I think the numbers bear that out. The reason I'm emphasizing it again is I think we'll see that when we talk about the 5-year financial forecast later, even though we took a FTE or full-time equivalent cut this coming budget year, in the future we're holding it flat because the trend seems to be that any shrinkage is actually slowing, if not stopping. So I think that's where this kind of data, as it gets continuously updated, enables us to make better financial projections going forward. So hopefully we'll have more kids coming in.
Any comments? All right, it's good stuff.
Okay, next is the audit report. Annually, the District 203 engages an independent accounting firm to perform an audit of our financial records in accordance with general auditing standards and procedures. The audit is presented to you tonight for your review. In board docs, you were provided with some summary comments and overview. Brad, additional information you'd like to share at this time, but our intent would be to come back for conversation more in depth about the audit itself. This is an opportunity for you to review it. Brad, any introductory comments?
No, thank you. That's covered it. I would just ask if the board has any specific questions, please reach out to me as we're preparing an analysis of the report. I want to be able to present it in the format that's the information you're looking for. So.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Donna was dropped, so we're going to try and call her back now.
Welcome back.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. 6.06, President's Report. I don't have anything to report. Any Board of Education reports? Mike?
Just one quick update since the student ambassador has led the way on this. I know every school in the district had some kind of Veterans Day event, and I was privileged enough to be able to speak in front of a group of veterans here at 7 a.m. on Veterans Day. And for those in the community who don't know, many years ago, I'm not sure the exact time, but about 8 or 9 years ago, Veterans Day was a school holiday in this district. And after consultations with the American Legion and the VFW and other veterans in the community, everybody came to the agreement that at least we'd try it, but we'd have school on Veterans Day and make a concerted effort to bring the veterans into the schools. And having been part of it for the last 8 years, I can say it's been a resounding success. I hear only good things from students, staff, and the kids, and the veterans themselves. And I just wanted to give one more word of thanks to them for participating. We had another full room, and then they go out to all the schools, and there's any variety of activities, whether it be an all-school assembly or just going in small groups and talking to kids in classrooms. So it was another wonderful event. I certainly hope we continue that tradition, and I think everybody really enjoys it.
Great. Thank you. It was a wonderful event.
I also think in light of recent world events, it's always more important to honor our veterans since we're asking more and more for our men and women to go and serve. And it's a good reminder for our children that it's kind of the world we live in these days.
Yeah, and I'll just add that today I received an email from Ray McGurry, the executive director of the Fox Valley, the Naperville Park District, thanking a number of our students for attendance at an event that was held over in the Healing Fields in the Wall Memorial. So again, just our kids are out in the community doing great things and representing the school district very well. So
very good. Okay, number 7, we have a series of monthly reports that are included: treasury reports, investments, insurance, and budget report. They're there for public viewing. Are there any questions from the board on any of those reports? Very well, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody want to pull or discuss any specific item on the consent agenda? In that case, will please have a motion?
And this is the right number now, right? In board desks? Okay. I had the pleasure of meeting with Brad Kaufman, our CFO, and his staff today to review the bills, claims, and warrants of the district for the past month, and I found everything to be in order. My questions were answered. So I hereby move approval of warrant number 403519 through warrant number 404400, totaling $18,826,102.45 for the period of October 20th, 2015 to November 16th, 2015, and the remainder of the consent agenda, items 8.02 through 8.04.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the action by consent agenda as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Price,
Yes.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Fielden,
Yes?
Prati,
Yes.
Wonky,
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Motion carries. Discussion without action, 5-year financial forecast.
Okay, we'll begin with the 5-year financial forecast. In each November, administration presents to the Board of Education an updated 5-year financial forecast. It is referenced in your documents. PMA Financial Network assists the administration with the development of this forecast. Software used to develop the projection 5cast is new this year. This forecast includes information on all funds. As part of the process of developing the 5-year financial forecast, administration meets with the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee. This committee is comprised of District 203 residents who have areas of interest and expertise that could prove beneficial in developing our projections. The committee met on November 10th Board of Education members Terry Field and Mike Yench serve as the board liaisons to this committee, and they were in attendance at that meeting. An initial draft of the projections was presented to the committee for discussion. And as a result of the discussion and the committee's input, we've made a couple changes to the assumptions that we're using in our model that we're presenting this evening. The most notable changes to the model, which Brad will address in his presentation, are changes to our assumption for CPI, assumptions for existing and new property, and assumption for health care costs. And while there are still many unknowns out there that could impact our financial forecast, such as will there be a property tax freeze, will there be a pension cost shift, and if so, at what rate, and will there be any change to the school funding formula, Brad will now present to you a financial forecast with your review with what we know. So Brad, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Bridges. As you just mentioned, and as we know, the 5-year financial forecast is a comprehensive interactive planning tool that the district uses for budget purposes, tax levy determination, and general future planning. It is made in conjunction with the PMA Financial of Naperville. We use their software called 5Cast. This planning tool is also used to develop what-if scenarios, which help us to determine impacts of different things. In fact, we'll look at one of those such tonight, a property tax freeze. The data elements that are involved in this and the 5-year projection are based on the list there on the screen, which are provided to PMA from the district and then loaded into the software. Also, please note, as Superintendent Bridges mentioned, that the new 5Cast software now includes all funds. This includes the debt service and life safety. The reason for this is to provide comparability between the audit, the budget, and the 5-year financial forecast. The district's fiscal year 2016 working budget is the key building block for the 5-year financial forecast and is graphically displayed on the screen. As you can see, the district is very dependent on local property tax, which represents about 85% of the district's total revenue. What's the difference between the original budget versus the working budget? Well, you'll remember that when the fiscal year 16 original budget was being developed, it was based on the fiscal year 15 budget. So it was, in a sense, a budget-to-budget comparison. Now we have the fiscal year 15 actual results, which allows us to make a comparison of the fiscal year 15 actual results to the fiscal year 16 original budget. And we make adjustments as appropriate, as you see here on the screen. So total revenue has gone up by $471,000 overall. Revenue assumptions. The district levies 2 types of taxes: operational levy, which is capped, and then a debt service levy, which is not capped. The Property Tax Extension Limit Law, or PTEL, limits the increase in the operating tax levy to the lesser of 5% or the Consumer Price Index as of December 30th, and the tax on new property. Debt service is set as part of the bond referendum and is automatically levied unless adopted or less abated by the board each March. Consumer Price Index is the single largest revenue assumption in the 5Cast model, since it controls an estimated 85% of the district's revenue. The numbers on the left, in the dark purple, are the historical actual CPI year-over-year changes as measured as December 30th. The numbers on the right, the light purple, are our estimated numbers. For example, December 31st, 2014, the CPI was 0.8 and sets the upper limit that existing tax levy can increase for the 2015 tax levy. For fiscal year 17, the district will rely on 50% of the tax levy from 2015, which will be set in December of this year, and 50% of the 2016 levy, which is still unknown. Finally, for your reference, the September 30th year-over-year change in the CPI was 0, and we are projecting a December 30th year-over-year CPI change of 0 also. New property growth, and I'm sorry, to go back, during Citizens Finance Advisors, that is one of the major assumptions we discussed with them, and they felt comfortable with lowering it to the 0. We had initially projected it at 0.5, and so we lowered it to 0. New growth is the second key factor in the district's new property tax. We're estimating a $28 million in new property growth versus 27.2 last year. So put this in perspective, for tax year, levy year 14, the district received $1.5 million in tax revenue from new property growth. Now, another thing we discussed at Citizens Finance Advisor in length was what's happening with our equalized assessed value and estimated property growth. From those discussions and from additional information provided from Lyle Township, we now know that our estimated property tax growth could be potentially already $36 million. So we will talk a little bit later about our tax levy, which we have based on $40 million, and administration would want some discussion with the board about actually maybe raising that a little, as we already know we think we're approximately at $36 million. Based on the current CPI assumptions and the new growth assumptions that we just discussed, the district is expecting its aggregate tax levy, including debt service, to increase to $251.4 million by 2020. Equalized assessed value. The district is projecting that the equalized assessed value will continue to recover or grow in the future with an estimated rate of 4% for levy year 15 and 3% thereafter. This, like I mentioned, this was heavily discussed at our Citizens Finance Advisors, and the committee felt comfortable. We now have a new member. Actually, it's the Naperville Township us now assessors actually on our committee, so he's very helpful. I would note that these figures here do include new growth. When you look at the property tax rate, this is good news. The increase in EAV is resulting in an overall tax rate decline. So we are looking to see, as you see here in the light purple, looking for the districts, this is including the bonds, looking for our tax levy rate to actually decline in the future. Corporate personal property tax is expected to increase at about 1.9% as based on Department of Revenue estimates. All other projections for revenue is remaining flat. For state, we are expecting that the foundation level to remain as it has for about 5 years now at $6,119. But we're projecting at the lower 89% proration, which has kind of been more historical. Other state grants are flat. Finally, federal revenue projections we're expecting to be about flat, except for Title I, which is to do with some funding change. So we're expecting to lose about $100,000 there and going forward. With all of those assumptions we just discussed, we are expecting our estimated revenue to grow to $287.3 million by fiscal year 2021. The sensitivity analysis is very important because it helps us understand how an individual assumption will impact the 5-year financial forecast. The largest 3 levers are listed on the screen. For example, we estimated on this projection model you're looking at that in 2015 we'd have a new growth would be about $28 million. But what impact would it have on the model if we did, as we've discovered in Finance Advisors, really receive $36 million in new growth? This would result in $432,000 of more tax levy based on the new property, and that would be collected in the 2015 tax levy and forward. So it would be keep going. Expenditures, just as with revenue, the working budget is the key building block for the expenditures. As this chart indicates, salaries and benefits account for about 78% of the district's expenditures, so assumptions around salaries and benefits are paramount when making the expenditure projections. Here again, we take a look at the original budget, compare it to the fiscal year 15 actual results, and then make changes as necessary. In this case, we are projecting that we lowered the budget by $2.3 million, which mainly was made up of reduction in salaries and benefits. All salary and benefit assumptions are based on the current contracts and historical changes which are subject to change. All staffing has been held flat while the district awaits its updated enrollment projections. Based on flat staffing, boy, say that 5 times fast, and all aforementioned salary and benefit assumptions, the district expects its salaries and benefit expenditures to reach $236.3 million by fiscal year 2021. This model projects no legislative change in the general state aid formula or the PTEL property tax extension limit law. We are accounting for a possible 0.5% TRS shift, and retiring staff will be replaced by new staff at MA Step 5. Finally, we have increased natural gas and electric budgets and special ed tuition by 6% annually. Transportation fuel, special education contracts for transportation are being increased at 3% annually, and general liability insurance increased at 3% annually also. And I apologize, one other thing I would want to mention, I kind of missed over it, but in Citizen Finance Advisor, we had a large discussion about health insurance. We had built in the original assumptions a 5% increase for health insurance. After our discussions and deliberation, we then increased it to 6% based on trending in the health insurance. So that is updated in here. Based on all the aforementioned expenditure assumptions, the district expects total expenditures to reach $299.2 million by fiscal year 2021. Please note that in fiscal year 10 and 11, this includes non-reoccurring construction costs. Just as with revenue, expenditure sensitivity analysis is important because it helps us understand the impact of individual assumptions on the model. The largest 3 levers are listed on the screen. For example, if the TRS pension shift is not implemented in fiscal year 17, as we're projecting in the model, then the district's pension expenditure would be $625,000 lower than projected in fiscal year 17 and forward. All the assumptions are accumulated into individual fund financial pro formas, which are finally aggregated into a final projection summary, detailed here on the slides. The detailed pro forma by funds were included in your packets. Please note here, if I make my clicker there, right there, the district is also projecting that the district will call or pay off the $9.5 million in outstanding bonds from the 2008 issue in February of 2018 and are listed here as other financing uses. You will note that when we graph revenue versus expenditure, the crossover year where expenditures are greater than estimated revenues occurs in fiscal year 19, with a gap between projected revenue and expenditures of $4.6 million. The district's fund balance is projected to decrease by $22.7 million or 14.7% over the next 6 years. And the individual bars, as you see here, this is a multi-use graph. These individual bars here project, as we put there, the education fund and the different funds across with the total summary here on the red line. This is just the last 5 years. As you can see from this graph, the educational fund will take most of the effect since it's the district's main operating fund. We did look at one other scenario that we would like to present, or a what if, and that is a what if a property tax freeze in 16 and 17. If Senate Bill 318 or some other version of a property tax bill is passed in Springfield, which would freeze the 2016-2017 levies, the district is projected to lose an additional $4.1 million over the next 5 years based on our current assumptions. Please note this property tax freeze is projected for 16-17, but the reduction in the tax levy is permanent and continues indefinitely unless made up by a change in law or a tax levy referendum. Based on this property tax freeze, we are projecting this property tax freeze will be realized in 2018 in partial, with the full impact hitting the district in fiscal year 19 due to how the tax levies are spread over fiscal years. You will notice that now when we graph revenue versus expenditure, that the projected crossover line occurs 1 year earlier in fiscal year 18 with a greater gap between expenditures and revenue. The district's fund balance is projected to decrease, if on this assumptions, by $26.8 million or 17% over the next 6 years. And with that, I would answer any questions or comments that the board has about the model.
Thank you, Brad. Any questions from the board? Kristen? Or Susan?
Brad, something I hear a lot, whether our budget's approved or not, but the question I get asked a lot is, what about the lottery money for students in education? Can you address that a little bit?
Well, not really.
Okay.
You know, it's a state, one of the state's funding mechanisms, and supposedly that money is collected and is supposed to be distributed out to schools. I have not researched that or know much about it, truthfully.
Well, I'll be asking you about it again.
Okay, I'll write it down.
There you go.
We'll bring that back. We're going to discuss, our next report is going to be the levy, and we'll discuss that, and I think that'll tie into maybe.
That's great.
So we'll do that for next time.
Kristen?
Thank you for your presentation. And it sounds like you did a really great job at the Citizens Finance Advisory Committee working on getting the expertise of our community in terms of these types of assumptions. So I'm pleased to see some of the changes that were put in there. I think that they're reflective of what we do expect to see. I have a couple questions in terms of federal revenue. You mentioned that we are down in federal revenue. Can you explain why that is?
Yes, okay, so there's several areas in which we are seeing a lower federal revenue. Medicaid matching would be the first. We're seeing about $250,000 less in that. We are seeing a little less in federal IDA, federal board and room. That's been cut too. And then finally, the rest would just be in our IDA and Title I allocations.
So I agree that your Title I should go down based on the ESCA that was potentially agreed on in the House and the Senate, and it does expect that the Title I will go down. But you, I think, besides that, just held it flat. So do you not expect the Medicaid reductions to continue and the IDEA reductions to continue?
Yes, so let me clarify when I say flat.
Okay.
Okay, so the first step in this 5-year financial projection process is to align your current budget, your 16 budget, to your 15 actuals. So we lowered in the 16 budget Medicaid, Title I, board and room, or I'm sorry, IDA, board and room, and those things. We lowered them, and then we held them flat in the projections.
So you don't expect further reductions, or no?
Well,
Has it been decreasing each year, or was it just this year?
no, it's been declining a little bit, but you know, with a district our size, we're already down to like 250,000 on Medicaid reimbursement, and I can't imagine us dropping below that. I mean, you know, years ago, this was like almost $1 million revenue source for us, but it's, you know, the last 10 years, it's really declined. But we're kind of down to the bottom, if you will.
Okay. And our costs continue to increase in those areas, is that correct?
Well, those are services that are provided, you know, to students, so they will be all sorts of different services that are provided by our staff, which are Medicaid reimbursable, but, you know, the state or the federal
Just
government
the
gets...
reimbursement level that's dropping.
Well, and
not
they
the
get
cost.
more scrutinizing on what we can count, what we can't count. They really, you know, so it all adds in there.
Second question, there's a pretty large variance in terms of salary and benefits. Can you explain that for this year's budget?
Certainly, we're putting together, and that's what I'm asking when regarding the audit for input on what we wanted to look at. You know, one thought I had on putting together, because it does touch a lot of different areas, was to actually take our budget book and then put our actual in there and make some kind of a comparison of that. But, you know, when you look at that salary variance, 6.8 million, it's large, and it touches a lot of different areas. And so really we're at this point putting together a full analysis of where those all, you know, touch. That also includes, there's a benefit analysis, or a benefit variance also. That makes up the majority of our positive budget variance. But then we do have some other areas that were also below too. So, you know, we plan to put together a full report for the board, and that's where we'd appreciate some formatting, what you would how you'd like to see that report. You know, I'll work with Superintendent Bridges on some ideas, and, you know, probably get some ideas through board planning, and then get a report back out to you.
So you'll have additional information about that.
Right, but that is why you've noticed when we did the working budget adjustments, you know, we adjusted those down.
Thank you.
Mike?
Why not? When is that? When are you planning on coming forward with that report?
I think if we can get it together and agree on a format, we should have it for next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good, because I mean, the lessons learned from the audit obviously apply to our working budget, so hopefully we'll refine those numbers going forward. The other thing, just one thing I didn't hear mentioned, maybe alluded to, that did come out of the Finance Advisors Committee was the general, well, the couple people that had some insight into Springfield seem to think that our pension cost shift is not only probably going to come, but probably come at a faster rate than we are projecting. Now, we don't know that yet, and obviously we have time to adjust our budget going forward if they ever get around to doing something. But, you know, it's another thing just to keep in the back of your mind. I wanted to make sure everybody on the board heard that.
Yeah, that's, if I can just interrupt on that point, that is a good point. We're not hearing anything specific on what it might be, so for us to just assume or make a guess, I don't think would be a worthwhile venture for us. But as we get updates from Springfield in anything more concrete, then we would make adjustments.
And obviously I'm not attributing that to anybody, so, but it is another thing, because that, you know, over $1 million per 1%, that can add up pretty quickly. If they were to go from 0.5% to even 1% a year, that would change the slope of the line rather quickly. So anyway, yeah, I'm looking forward to, because the one thing I know with the 5-cast, there were already some changes made to methodology. Hopefully as we, you know, do the forensic on our audit and translate that into our working budget, we can refine these numbers going forward to make them even more reliable so that we can make intelligent decisions going forward.
Any other questions?
Just a comment, and obviously, I guess it should.
Question.
Oh,
All right.
go ahead. Go ahead while she's on.
All right, go ahead, Donna.
So I thought I heard Brad say that a year's crossing changes with the property tax freeze, and I don't know, the graphs to me look like, unless I'm looking at something wrong, they look like they're still at the same year. If I'm looking at the revenue versus expenses on slide 24, and then the revenue versus expenses with the property tax freeze on 30.
No, they do cross sooner.
At the same year, correct?
It's 2018 if the property tax freeze goes in place.
Right. You know, Donna, here's the difficult thing. You know, this when you've got that spread there on the graph, it's difficult to see where the lines are actually going. But it is crossing a year sooner, but it's very hard to tell that on this kind of a graphic. So you'd have to look at the actual detail report.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Donna?
No, I'm good, thanks.
All right, Kristen?
And what is our latest on the property tax freeze? Have we, from Springfield? I know we do, does Lend have any projections or?
We all anticipate some things coming, whether it's in the format that we've modeled here with assumptions, which is based off of Senate Bill 318, or something different. I am not hearing anything from Lend or from LUDA or from any other groups right now. I know the leaders were supposed to meet, and that's been put off till December 1st. We might have an indication after that. But again, I'm not hearing anything in terms of a budget in the very near future. I've heard now maybe in January, but I've also heard as late as end of November 2016. So
In terms of when they would come to an
Correct.
agreement about that, yeah. I mean, obviously, looking at this, the greatest concern is where those lines cross, and it gets closer and closer. And so it's, you can't look at these documents without being concerned.
I will, just as a long time, when we did the referendum, the operating fund referendum in 2002, we anticipated the lines would cross in 2010, 2011. So we've been able to extend that quite a bit through, careful spending and careful saving and being responsible stewards of our funds. So these are just projections. It's not, there's a lot that can happen. I mean, that's the challenge in education funding and public education funding. Brett, can you tell us a little bit about the folks on the committee? You mentioned that Warren Dixon is on there. I think we've got quite a breadth of experience and knowledge. It's a terrific committee.
Yes, it's a great committee. We've added 2 new members this year, Warren Dixon and Chris Hall. Warren, of course, comes with, the assessment, which is 85% of our revenue, so giving us some great insights. Chris Hall comes to the committee on the financial banking part. We've got attorneys, we just a great mix, and retired financial person.
Bankers, individuals in the health industry, which can
Right.
provide great assumptions on the cost of health care. So I think we have a cross-section of community members that represent different interests related to finance that, in their day-to-day work can provide us guidance and input as we look at our assumptions.
Yeah, I commend you on that. I mean, the committee is something that certainly provides me, I can't speak for the whole board, with quite a bit of understanding and appreciation and comfort with it. Not that we wouldn't be comfortable with your projections. It's just nice to have such a breadth of experience to take a look at it. So I hope they are helpful to you.
Absolutely. Each time we go through this presentation, I feel like we refine it and it gets more accurate and more, better, stronger projections. And we certainly saw that coming out of Finance Advisors. I felt like the model made a big leap forward.
Good. Thank you.
I did have one more question, sorry.
Go ahead.
So Brad, on the projection summary, the detailed one, can you just remind the community too, when we're looking at this, the fund balance as a percentage of the expenditures, we have a policy on that, and looking at these percentages, can you remind us what the policy is?
Right. Now, this projection here, this is standard formatting for the 5cast. So I'm actually in the process of preparing an additional report that will go for the board. You're referring to policy 440, which refers to how many months of cash on hand, cash or cash equivalents on hand before early taxes we would need to have. This is actually not quite the comparison, but the bottom line is that is to be slated at 10%. And I'll be putting together an additional report that we'll have for our next meeting regarding that policy 440.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Anyone else? Brad, you did a great job at the meeting. I appreciate the fact that you held the meeting to an hour. I think that's an effective use of everybody's time overall and kept everybody's attention. Certainly adding Warren Dixon's thoughts to your property value assessments and so forth, he did mention that they were accurate and that they were in line with what he was seeing across the area in both Naperville and Lisle Townships. I think that's a credit to you that it reinforces what you're giving us as far as information goes. So I appreciate that as well.
I appreciate his input.
And there was one question I had in particular about how a teardown is assessed and what value it is assessed on, because we have these new new construction values that are always put into the budget, and my concern was we're out of land and would that continue to grow. What Warren Dixon explained was if you have a property teardown and they buy the property for $300,000, they tear it down, they put up a $1.5 million house, the property is assessed at $1.2 million as new construction. So there's always going to be some new growth. Every time there's a nice new large home put up on a smaller lot, we get new construction value out of it. So it's good to know. All right, thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
We want to go ahead and move right to the levy presentation then and go to the kind of the key point slide, Brad, the first slide after the title slide. I'll just make a couple comments and turn it over to Brad. But annually, the district sets a tax levy, and at least 20 days prior to adopting the levy, the district must estimate its aggregate levy for the year. And tonight, Brad's going to provide the board and our community with information relative to our anticipated levy. There are some good things for us out there and good things for taxpayers in our community. We are seeing the value of existing properties increase. We're also seeing growth in new properties in our district. And with this levy, homeowners should expect to see their District 203 rates decline, as illustrated here on the slide. And so, Brad, why don't you go ahead and walk us through the whole process and help the board understand our estimated levy.
All right. Thank you, Superintendent Bridges. Yes, it's good news that the home values are recovering. We're estimating from Citizen Finance Advisor's discussion that this reassessment for 2015 will be at about 4%, as I mentioned in our financial forecast. That is bringing down or decreasing the district's estimated overall property tax rate. We have, as I mentioned, within our estimated 2015 tax levy, we have estimated $40 million of new growth. The way that works is when the actual number is known, the county clerk will actually decrease our extension so that we make sure that we only tax at what was actual new growth. I'm going to be working with Superintendent Bridges to probably move this up a little. We want to make sure that we don't have any property that doesn't be fully taxed, new property, so $40 million is a little tight. But finally, what the best news here would be on you can see the history there, on a $375,000 fair market value home. There's the history. What we'd be projecting for this upcoming year is $53 or 0.8% on average for an existing taxpayer. So as you know, there's many things that go into the financial projections that we just talked about, and finally, to complete that process would be the actual 2015 tax levy, which makes up about 85% of the district's total revenue. Setting the 2015 tax levy or extension is governed by 3 specific laws, which are listed here. Let me just quickly review those laws for you. First is the Truth in Taxation Law. which require specific notices and hearing requirements if the tax levy exceeds 5%. This is what we refer to as the famous black box ads. It's been years since we've actually had levies at that rate, so this will not apply because we're estimating our existing tax levy to only go up at 0.8% based on CPI. But this law also requires that the governing body estimates the tax levy at least 20 days prior to adopting the actual levy. So we're here tonight to present that to you and to meet that requirement of estimating our tax or making a tax determination for our public. Finally, then there's also school code and property tax codes, which also govern what we need to do, and following these timelines. So this timeline here laid out, we're here tonight to estimate the levy, or what they call tax determination. Then we'll come back more than 20 days from, we would actually propose on December 21st to adopt the levy, as long as it's more than 20 days in between there. And then finally, by law, you have to file or certify your tax levy with the county clerk by the last Tuesday in December. And then if the board would so choose, by March 31st of 2016, any debt service or bond abatements would need to be filed with the county by that date. Finally, as you know, the overarching law that governs taxes, which was piled on top, is what's called the Property Tax Extension Limit Law, or PTEL. Governs the overall increase in the property tax levy or extension from one year to the next. For the existing taxpayer, their taxes cannot increase by more than inflation, or CPIU, for December, or 5%. New taxpayers, or what we call new construction, is outside the tax caps and is taxed at the current combined levy rate for the existing taxpayer. Our revenue for each $1 million of new property tax growth we receive about $54,000 worth of additional tax. Since new construction is not known, final numbers are not known until April of 2016, we estimate the new construction a little high to make sure that we tax for everything that's on the books. As I mentioned, the county clerk our treasurer will actually adjust our extension down once the actual new construction is known. If you look at the proposed 2015 levy, first, it's provide adequate resources to meet the district's financial needs based on our 5-year financial projections. Results in a operating fund, excluding a debt service, tax levy extension of about 1.77%, or existing taxpayers would pay the 0.8, and we would receive about a 0.97 in new growth. Debt service is expected to go up by 0.5% for an estimated overall 1.75 estimated rate. We already talked about the impact to a $375,000 home, about $54, or 0.8%. This is our actual tax determination, which is included in your packets and details out the estimated tax levy by fund and with the corresponding estimated tax rate. Finally, just to recap some of those key points, we are estimating that the district's overall tax rate will decline. The existing property values are increasing in the district. New growth is very strong at $36 million, and we're going to probably bump that up a little to make sure we have plenty of room. And finally, just recapping that $375,000 home, that taxpayer would see on average about a $54 increase over the prior year's tax. The administrative recommendation would be is that the board adopts the tax levy as we are presenting. And with that, I'd entertain any questions.
Brad, you've mentioned a couple of times more information regarding new property. You want to speak to that and what a recommendation would be to the Board of Education if you were to recommend adjusting the new growth estimate at $40 million.
Yes, what we're looking at is we'd estimate to bring that to 50 million just to give ourselves, make sure there's no last minute. We don't have Will County yet, which is typically a smaller piece, but we just have, if you will, preliminary estimates out of our two largest townships, Lyle and Naperville. So until those are finalized, we typically like to have at least about a $10 million cushion just to make sure that if something comes online or some reassess, whatever, that we don't push it too close. They will be adjusted to actual once the new numbers are known.
And the reason for your recommendation for adjusting that higher comes as a result of information you've received very recently since this was posted from Lyle Township, correct? Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes.
The board understands the basis for your recommendation.
Absolutely. So we had a previous early estimate from Naperville, and then, of course, during Finance Advisors, we got more information there. But it wasn't until actually Friday that Lyle Township was actually able to get us an estimate, and that estimate came in a lot higher than we had anticipated. And so that then pushed us already plus 36 million, and we haven't even brought in Will County. So being at 40 million, it would just be too tight of an estimate. So I would not recommend staying at that. I would recommend going to 50 million, and then they'll adjust back to actual once the levy, or once the new growth is known in April. And also, I guess I should mention, by law, you know, the board can adjust and change the levy anything between, you know, from the initial determination till the final adoption, you know, as long as it's a reasonable adjustment. This would be, you know, reasonable adjustment.
And so again, conversation is scheduled for December 7th with a request for action on December 21.
Right.
Okay, Brad, thank you very much. Excellent report. Are there any questions or comments from the board on what we've seen so far? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next, 9.03.
Okay, as I do a couple introductory comments, I'll ask the presentation team to come forward. The Board of Education will recall that back in spring when we were talking about the enrollment projections presented by Dr. Coffin, which we also talked a little bit about earlier this evening, we looked at one of the projections specifically related to Naper Elementary School, and we had indicated that we were going to have to really look at the projected enrollment and current enrollment at Naper and begin to address capacity issues and concerns that we had at Naper. And so Kitty Ryan, our Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education, was tasked with that and built a team with her colleague Bob Ross, Julie Beeler, the principal at Naper, and recently joining us is John Vogel, the principal over at Washington Junior High School. And so what we asked this team to do is to really think about how we could address the enrollment concerns that we have at Naper Elementary School and come forward with a recommendation that would address that situation. This will be a process and a conversation. There have been a number of conversations that have taken place with focus groups at both Naper and Washington. So there's a lot of input that has gone into formulating this recommendation coming before you this evening. We would anticipate that we would have discussion again on December 7th. And then any potential action by the Board of Education to approve this recommendation at December 21st. After this presentation this evening, there will be additional opportunities for stakeholder input regarding this recommendation that can be part of your consideration before taking any action. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kitty Ryan to get us started and present to you a recommendation for Naper School for the coming year.
Just to make sure my microphone is properly adjusted. There we go. How does that sound? Well, good evening, Board of Education. The purpose of our presentation tonight is to provide you with information about the impact of enrollment at Naper Elementary School and to make a recommendation to address that situation. Increased enrollment coupled with the need for an additional classroom for all-day kindergarten limits instructional space at Naper. Future projections show that enrollment will continue to grow. And so our charge was to address this challenge. And so our team, made up of Julie Beeler, John Vogel, Bob Ross, and myself, in consultation with other district staff, including, and special thanks to Christine Igo and Jane Willard, worked over the past several months to develop potential solutions to meet the targets that you see on your screen. We began by studying NAPER's current building needs and future enrollment projections. We used that information along with other data to identify a number of possible solutions, which we're going to review with you in just a moment. We evaluated the impact of each of the solutions to determine the one that best met the targets. Next, we met with several focus groups comprised of parents, administration, and staff to gather feedback regarding the recommendation we bring to you tonight. Finally, we considered their feedback as we refined the final recommendation that we're about to present to you. Now I turn it over to Julie Beeler, principal of Naper Elementary.
This is a picture of what Naper looks like right now. As you can see on the chart on the top, we have 12 classrooms. Those are located on the first and second floor. Vocal music is held in our basement music room. Band and orchestra share the music room, stage, and at times the teacher's lounge and hallways for lessons. Honors Math and Project Idea have a small space carved out of the LRC. The addition of all-day kindergarten, which clearly provides tremendous benefits for our students, made it necessary to use that 12th classroom for kindergarten, moving art classes into the LRC. We're incredibly proud of how flexible and creative the Naper staff are at sharing and scheduling the space we do have. If you take a look at the chart on the right, you will see the current enrollment. We know our enrollment projections continue to rise, and I want to direct your attention to the class sizes, especially at kindergarten and first grade. We have been able to keep those numbers down by offering alternate attendance to the new families moving into the attendance area. This solution has been effective for the time being, as you can see that we actually have 54 students from Naper's attendance area at other elementary buildings. 32 of the 54 students are kindergartners and first graders. Those 54 students are at different buildings because of specific programs and alternate attendance. We've included these pictures to give you a flavor of how we are making this work right now. Everyone makes use of every available space. That includes small group instruction in the hallways and art class in the LRC. We have a tiny room behind the bookshelves and those black dividers that is used for Honors Math and Project Idea. One of our Project Idea classes is too large to fit into that space, so for the last hour of each day, the front part of the LRC is closed to be used as a Project Idea classroom.
This slide presents other important information that we use to identify solutions. These are the enrollment projections for Naper recently compiled by Dr. Coffin. As you see, his 2015-16 projections are actually lower than the actual number of students currently residing in the Naper attendance area. Please note, despite that he projects that the number of students residing in the Naper attendance area will continue to increase over the next several years.
Given our need for space, we began identifying solutions by considering a number of options. This list shows some, but not all, that we reviewed. The next slides will describe each option in detail. Let's walk through each option, first looking at finding a way to even more creatively use the space that we have. We looked at the idea of putting a grade-level classroom in that basement music room. That, of course, would put music on a cart. Moving musical instruments and the curriculum materials significantly compromises the instructional music program as a long-term solution. While the basement room works well for music and band, having a classroom so removed from the other grade levels would significantly affect teaming between teachers and student access to resources throughout the building. We looked at putting both art and music in the music room at alternate times. That would eliminate any space for band and band lessons. While putting art or music on a cart on a temporary basis can happen, this is not the standard in District 203, and we want to make sure that all our 203 students receive commensurate experiences. We looked at the Learning Center space and tried to find a way to divide it up more efficiently. But we already have those spaces filled with project idea and art, and work around those to provide small learning groups and the LRC services and programs. We even looked at our 2 larger classrooms, trying to find ways to divide those. While those classrooms are larger than the NAPER average classroom, they're not large enough to be split into 2. Whenever space issues occur, a mobile classroom is considered. Our challenges with a small building are compounded with a small site. The mobile would need significant space to comply with regulations, and that space is not available on the NAPER site. Closing NAPER. Knowing and understanding the importance of NAPER's history as the original site of learning for Naperville made this option less than optimal for the community. We are located so that approximately 240 of our 295 students can walk to school. Our building is in wonderful shape. Though small, the infrastructure is solid and learning that occurs inside is strong. Build on to NAPER. NAPER is located on 2.3 acres just outside the heart of downtown Naperville. This small site will not accommodate an addition large enough to meet current and future enrollment. And fiscal concerns also make this ill-advised at this time. Assign a grade level to another school. Without the ability to create sufficient space by reconfiguring NAPER or adding on to NAPER, it became clear that our best option is to reduce the number of students attending NAPER. Assigning a grade level to another school opens up 2 classroom spaces and reduces the number of students attending. When investigating limiting the number of grade levels served by NAPER by delaying entry to NAPER or accelerating a move to junior high. While there is a need to reduce the number of students at each grade level, the most pressing need is to create classroom space. While we can continue to offer alternate attendance to non-walking families new to NAPER, we may need to consider neighborhood reassignment. At first glance, moving the kindergarten program might make sense. They are little, they haven't experienced NAPER yet, but we need to remember our charge. We want to make sure that we create developmentally appropriate instructional settings for all students. And we want to make sure we consider the needs of students and families. Many of our students already attend preschool. They would then attend kindergarten at another site, and then they would transition to NAPER for first grade, creating 3 transitions for our youngest learners. When we think about the importance of early intervention and continuity of instruction, 3 transitions is a lot for our students and families. This would also mean that all NAPER kindergartners would then become busers and be bused to where the available space is across town.
And so it became obvious to us that we wanted to move the 5th grade program, and we determined that Washington would be our choice for the location for that 5th grade program for several important reasons. It keeps students on the same feeder path for junior high and high school. A move to Washington eliminates the need for an additional transition, although students do move to Washington as 5th graders rather than 6th graders. With careful planning that will include parent and teacher input, we will ensure a strong, developmentally appropriate program for our 5th graders. Washington can accommodate the 5th grade program with some adjustments, including relocating 2 magnet programs from Washington to Kennedy and impacting a total of less than 12 students if that move. It's also important to note that Washington Principal John Vogel was most recently an elementary principal, and his input as we collaboratively built this plan has allowed us to create a strong program comparable in every way to what students would have at NAPER.
We believe this option is the best because of the benefits that it will provide for students. We will continue the strong, cohesive academic programming at NAPER and Washington. We will maintain the feeder school pattern. The 2 classroom spaces that open up at Naper will provide an art classroom and a room for an additional section if needed. For example, if our 2nd grade numbers stay the same or continue to grow, we would then have the ability to move to 3 sections at that grade level. We currently do not have that as an option. Moving art out of the LRC will allow us to refresh that space so that it is conducive to flexible grouping activities.
So this table captures conference projections for Washington showing enrollment dipping over the next 4 years. Note that like Naper's projections, this shows students who reside in the Washington Junior High attendance area. The actual enrollment is noted here as 616 students. We would use 2 current 6th grade classrooms as 5th grade classrooms. These rooms are joined by a removable wall, which will offer flexibility to conduct grade level activities. These rooms are located at the top of the main staircase, the one closest to the office, which is also where 5th grade students will enter and exit. Lockers are located right outside the classrooms, making supervision convenient for staff. Additionally, these rooms are very close to the LRC. What would 5th grade look like for Washington 5th grade students? They would experience our District 203 5th grade curriculum. Naper teachers would move to Washington. 5th grade students would enter and exit the building separately from junior high students. Within the elementary school day, the students arrive at 8 o'clock and begin instruction at 8:15. Our junior high students arrive at 7:30 and are in the building by 8. The 5th graders would be dismissed at 2:30 prior to the junior high students at 2:50. We have plans for extended supervision for the 5th graders. If they wanted to arrive or go home with junior high siblings, supervision would be available. We also have busing options for those families that qualify. The 5th grade classrooms will be clustered and closer to the 6th grade students, and 5th grade would have their lunch and recess would occur separately from the older students.
We know the transition would be unique this year as both 4th and 5th grade students would be transitioning. We plan to include the 4th graders and the 5th graders in those special opportunities that are a part of every transition. At Naper, the LRC would have the flexibility to accommodate a variety of large and small group learning opportunities. Students would have access to classroom small group learning and class sizes more similar to other 203 classrooms. Students would experience the full art curriculum, and band and orchestra lessons could be moved out of the hall and the teacher's lounge.
And so thank you very much for your kind attention this evening. And finally, our recommendation is for you to approve the recommendation to relocate the 5th grade program from Naper Elementary School to Washington Junior High School. And now we're open for any questions you might have.
You have a next step slide there, Kitty.
Oh, thank you. If approved, we just wanted to review some next steps. I apologize for that. One of the things that we would do is certainly continue to involve parents through various meetings and times for them to understand our planning, and also through some very strategic communication. We would continue to work on plans for transitioning our students and families. A daily schedule would be firmed up. We have several models for that right now. We'd look at staffing and complete planning for that. We'd look at how we're going to provision materials, including moving all the materials that 5th graders need for their classrooms and for the LRC. And we would finalize classroom locations. And so now, thank you very much, and now we're open for questions.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Questions, Susan?
Kitty, could you address the specials that the students have a little more, the elementary students?
Well, one of the things that's really important to understand, Mrs. Crotty, is that we would be moving the 5th grade program to Washington. So our
Okay.
plans are that students would have the same specials and the same type of configuration as they would had they remained at Naper.
And your question is, what are they?
No,
Oh, okay,
just that you know that they're not going to lose kind of that elementary feel to
No,
them.
no.
They're not just going to be kind of absorbed into the junior high way of doing things. I just wanted to confirm that.
Thank you.
And then for you, Julie, I mean, year after year, I'm grateful to your seasoned experience at your school, really. And I mean, if I had to pick a principal that had to go through this, I mean, you've been doing this for, and working with that community so closely. When you take the emotion out of, because it's a very emotional issue to people, and Naper's a very emotional school. People grew up and went there, and now their kids go there and things like that. What I heard you say, and please tell me if I'm wrong, is that this is the best choice for students and for student learning.
It is. As we've walked down all sorts of options, and we really tried to stretch ourselves as we thought through, and we brought the most logical ones to you this evening. We really kept in as our target what the experience would be like for children, what the experience would be like for families. That was the driving piece of our decision making.
And I know, like, the fifth graders so often, right after the school year starts, they're so ready to go to junior high and so ready to transition. So they're ready for the next step. So, any concerns that you've heard or that?
The process we went through with our feedback groups was really helpful. What the parents shared with us were things that involved logistics. And just like you asked, well, what about the specials? Will they stay the same? What about yearbook? Will our fourth graders have an experience where they can have some special moment in the yearbook? What about field day at our school? Our fifth graders typically take on a leadership role there. And so the majority of the parent questions really focused around the logistics and the how-to, and making sure our children were really cared for in the transition. Our parents know that space has been tight for a while at Naper, and they've been very flexible and very supportive with that.
Thank you.
Susan?
How long do you think you'll need to have them there? The fifth grade?
Well, for me, permanent's a pretty heavy word, and so I'm not saying permanent, but it's definitely for the foreseeable future at this point.
Okay. And do you think this will solve the problem entirely? I know there were some other ideas talked about, or satisfactorily, or to your satisfaction, Julie and Kitty.
We're not absolutely sure that it will, to be totally frank. We're going to watch very closely enrollment over the next year, and possibly the year after that, to determine if our class sizes remain appropriate. What this does is create 2 additional classrooms for us. We need that for the art room and also to provide us with some flexible space. But we could continue to have more first graders or more second graders, and we'll need to review that.
It's going to address the immediate need with creating the space within the building to serve the program. It is an area that is projected to continue to increase in enrollment, so that's what we're going to have to continue to monitor. We're not in a position right now. It was referenced about the neighborhood reassignment. That's not something that we're bringing forward right now, but we're going to have to continue to watch to see if there are other recommendations that we're going to have to make in partnership or in cooperation with this recommendation. We will have to continue to offer and provide some alternate attendance assignments for families in some targeted grade levels.
So you'll continue when students come in to say, there's some other schools that are really nice.
We did that very strongly this year. We had a very concerted effort to do that. We met with each family enrolling and offered that as a possibility for them.
Did all of them take it? Most of
No.
them?
No, they didn't take. No, not all of them took it, especially those families that live right across the street from Naper. But several did.
So,
Emphasizes how much they value being able to walk to
Sure.
school. I think
Right.
that's a huge.
And that's a pretty striking number when you look at 240 kids out of the 295 are walking right now. So,
Provides the challenge, because if they're walking, you don't want to put them on a bus.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. Terrific report, though. Very well done.
Kristen?
I also appreciate the time that went into all of this and the time that went into all the preparation of the families and working with all of them. I know that that is a value statement to how much you want to hear about what they think, and I think that's really important. I have a couple of questions. I have a fifth grader, so I was thinking a little bit about a fifth grade experience, and my questions are, what about that fifth grade? Will they be able to continue even at Washington. So, for example, Halloween parties and Halloween parades, the field day, even that, whether it's the special role or not, having a field day, most fifth graders have. We have a fifth grade play. I don't know that every school does. I think it all varies. But will they be able to continue those kinds of activities that fifth graders across our district have at their new location?
I'll start, and then you can.
Yeah, sure.
We've talked quite a bit about that because you, like our parents, have those questions. And interestingly enough, our staff, as we presented to both staffs, those are the questions they came up with too. Those are important to people, and we want to make sure that our children have that experience. Should we have the approval to go ahead on this, we would continue our planning further down that road. But we definitely have talked about ways to make the experience unique for them and special for them in all of those things that you talked about. It's certainly dressing up for the autumn parade is something that happens already at Washington.
Okay.
We've talked about that. That's something that would continue. Programs at our school happen at fifth grade traditionally, but fourth grade doesn't traditionally have a program, so maybe the program would happen at fourth grade before they go to fifth grade. So we've walked all of those what ifs out, and have had
But for
great parent
these
input.
students that go,
And it's like I was going to say, and it's likely that there will be some overlap or some duplication.
Right.
Fourth graders at Napier may be doing some things next year that fifth graders at Washington are also doing, because that represents a year of transition. And I think the other exciting thing is that there will be the opportunity for new traditions and things to begin as well.
In terms of Washington parents, how have they had the opportunity to find out about this and answer the questions that they have?
We did have a focus group with Washington parents where we invited, I think, John, you invited your executive board in
And several other,
Yeah.
key committee members. And they came in and we did a focus group and went through any questions and got their feedback as well. The message was very well received. They were excited about the opportunity. And then we did also to Talk 203.
The same
Washington
day that
families.
Napier parents were notified, the entire Napier community was notified, so was the Washington community.
And so they just bring their questions to you, or?
Correct, or in the focus group.
Okay.
And I think as we think about this transition, it's probably fair to say, as much as the Napier home and school and parent stakeholders are going to be a part of talking about and thinking about this transition, the Washington will as well.
Yeah.
And would you say that the feedback has been positive from the Napier students and the Napier families and the Washington families as well?
Yes, I smile when you say students. One important thing that we heard from one of our focus groups was valuing me going in and talking to the fourth grade students. So I went into each of the classrooms and talked to them about the option, and they were very excited. I did explain pending board approval. And to fourth graders, which they took very well. And but the interesting thing, the traditions were important to them. One of the things that we do is we clap out our fifth graders. We all stand in the hallways, and the fifth graders go through the upstairs and the downstairs, and we all give them high fives. Fourth graders wanted to know that they would be clapped out on their transition. We said absolutely. The thing that got the rousing cheers, which surprised me, was I happened to mention that, you will go through the hot lunch line there too. You'll have some more choices. Rousing, spontaneous cheer to more choices. The children were very excited, and our parents were very thoughtful, careful, and very supportive. The comments were all around, well, how do we make this work in the best way?
School exec board is here tonight.
I do. I have my exec board sitting behind us, and they've been wonderfully supportive in making sure that parents have their questions answered and really feel part of this process.
Okay. And then I know you'll be continuing to monitor the attendance. Can you give me an idea of how many of the students that you have reassigned have been reassigned just for purposes of enrollment and not for, dual language or a different programmatic change?
Around 18 students.
Okay. So of that 50, was it 54, 54 or something? 18 of the 54 are just for this.
Quite a number of dual language.
Quite a number. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Mike?
Couple questions, and they deal a little bit more with the other two schools involved, because I think it's pretty clear that this is a huge benefit and necessary for Napier. My questions, and I guess I'm looking for reassurance. They're not really concerns, because I know you've spent a lot of time already and you have a lot more details to go through. But things like sixth graders, you're moving at least 2 sections of them. Where are they going to be moving the building? Do you have that much excess space?
You want to answer the magnet? Okay. Yeah, well, with the relocation of the magnet program, it would free up 2 more classrooms for us, and we also would look at the computer lab. Would not be a computer lab next year with digital learning initiative rolling out, so we would have that space available.
And what happens, have you already looked ahead to, we have a bump in the new 3rd grade, or the current 2nd grade, in 2 years, 2.5 years, when they show up in Madison, are we going to have room for, Madison? Washington. Are we going to have room for 3 sections of 5th grade up there?
We will. Washington's population, even now, fluctuates a little bit. Sometimes we use each of the 20 classrooms all day long or nearly all day long. Some years we don't. It depends. So we're already accustomed to it going up and down a little bit. But yes, in the year where a large group or a couple of large groups move their way up to Washington, we'll absolutely be able to respond. The program level for Washington is listed as 750 students. So even with welcoming a little over 50 students, we're still well under that. Each year, the principal will, in the spring, plan for the subsequent year, look at the number of students coming in, schedule the building, place the students in the proper spot. So it might be a different room 4 years from now, or rooms might get moved around. But yes, we'll be able to accommodate that.
And I assume you've already looked at stuff like gym scheduling, lunch scheduling, bus scheduling. I understand we're not going to add buses. They're just going to make an extra stop.
That's right. It's basically it. And so that will be an easy accommodation, and we're happy to offer flexibility to parents as well in terms of busing, so that the parent that has children at Napier will be able to put their Washington 5th grader on that Napier bus, and children and families that have maybe an 8th grader and a 5th grader will be able to put both on that Washington bus, and knowing that when that 5th grader gets to Washington, there will be supervision provided. And similarly, when it's time to dismiss, we can provide that same accommodation, because we wanted to make this as family-friendly as we could.
I guess the last question I had was, as you mentioned, one of the magnet programs, 2 classrooms are going to be moving to Kennedy. Kennedy used to be pretty packed. Is that not the case anymore? They can fit, because this is going to be a lot of equipment and stuff like that moving too, correct?
Yes, that's right, Mr. Yench. And we've been out. I've met with Mr. Valek. Mr. Mathis came with us. Mr. Bridges and I were also over at Kennedy the other day looking at the rooms. In this case, again, it's a computer lab that'll be repurposed as DLI comes in. Timing's very fortuitous for that. And another classroom. I'm not sure that teacher knows yet, so I won't announce that classroom, but a classroom that has plenty of space for this purpose.
They may be watching.
We have district special education programs at Washington. One is an autism classroom, and one is what we refer to as our multi-needs program. And so, yes, there is certainly plenty of space for that. And Kennedy's enrollment is down from what it's been before. But I think really taking advantage of that computer lab is one of the things that's helping us a lot.
One last question on Washington. Looking at the layout, I know we did some considerable work on the office space and the entrance several years ago, but the actual learning spaces really haven't been addressed in a while. And one that pops into mind is the LRC itself is possibly, with one-to-one, going to be less utilized than it is now. Obviously, you can ad-lib some of that stuff, but has there been any thought to actually repurposing some of that square footage?
We have talked a little bit about that, and partially in relation to this move, because
Yes.
with 5th graders coming in, we're certainly going to have to review collection and appropriateness of resources, but then also how do we make that a flexible enough space to serve students now 5th grade through 8th grade. So we don't have specific plans on what, but we will be looking at what we can do in that space to create more of a flexible learning environment.
Okay, thank you.
How will you address that with the books? Because I know that there are, for example, my 5th grader's asking her junior high sister to check one out that's not at their school. So how will you address that in terms of having the books that 5th graders want to read, but also
some
book,
restrictions.
the 8th grade books.
We've talked about that, although we don't have the absolute final plan for that, but certainly what we'll do is augment the Washington Library or library collections so that we know that we have appropriate 5th grade books there, and we'll have to work out a way that we have a 5th grade only collection.
Should be orientation,
Yeah.
just like we do
Yeah.
with the students now, in terms of orienting the 5th grade students to where collections
they're-
are
where
appropriate for
they're-
them.
mhm.
And then, again, that relationship between the LRC director as well as the classroom teachers on appropriately guiding and helping our students make selections
Okay.
on resources.
Okay. And then one other question, playground. I know at 5th grade you have a playground when you're in the elementary school. What about in the junior high area?
Well, at Naper, traditionally our 5th graders don't play on the playground equipment because there are some younger children there that have that space, and we share space very well at Naper.
Okay.
Typically, our 5th graders have had kind of their fill of the climbing activities. We
Okay.
certainly have balls and foursquare and jump ropes and things like that, and John and I have talked about making sure that we had those opportunities. That was important to the children, too. They
I'm sure.
wanted to make sure they got their bag of equipment that they could take with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Donna, did you have questions?
Yes, I did. So first, I just want to thank everybody for the presentation and just the thoroughness in the process. I've heard nothing but positive feedback from the community members that I've spoken to, so thank you. Also, I just want to make sure, I heard a lot of the answers. I didn't hear necessarily, couldn't hear all of the questions, but I just want to make sure I understand. So the shift to the 2 5th grade classrooms will then alleviate, I heard art was moving into one of them, and then is PI moving into the other one? That was what I was unclear on.
Julie, do you want to
Sure.
speak to that?
I'd be happy to speak
Yeah.
to that. No, the other classroom would be used as what we call a bump classroom in the event that one of our sections needs a 3rd section. To answer your question about the PI section, should we have a PI section that is large like we do this year, we absolutely could use that space. But it would not be exclusively dedicated to just PI. We really see every space at Naper School as a multi-use space, and we schedule really throughout the day in all of the spaces there.
Okay, so it could alleviate, like you said, a class that needs an extra section as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I thank you again for all of your diligence, because I think, like I said, I've talked to some community members and heard nothing but positive, and just how thorough and detailed the whole process has been, so thank you.
Good, thank you.
Anything else, Donna?
Nope, that's all I have.
All right. It was a great report, and I know I've attended 2 home and school meetings, one at the end of last year, one at the beginning of this year. And I could say that Julie's really done a wonderful job in prepping the home and school, and the home and school has been very active in participating in that. So I think that's a good thing. And I know that the parents are anxious to at least hear the decision so they can begin planning and organizing their lives accordingly. At least that was very clear to me the last home and school meeting I attended. So, but that's a good thing. So, and I know they've had tremendous cooperation and participation in this. And I think it's a testament to the community just in general that they're willing to make the sacrifice. They know something had to change, but there's enough interest in the school that they want to maintain it, but they're also willing to give where they need to give for the betterment of the entire school, and that's a real testament to our mission statement as well as our administrators. So thank you.
It's a wonderful community.
It is. Thank you very much.
I'll just remind the board of the timeline. We'd expect to address any additional questions or comments that you may have on the December 7th meeting, then look for action on December 21st. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Okay, we're on to discussion with action.
Okay, at our last Board of Education meeting, Kevin Okevich, our Director of Summer Learning, was here to present a recommendation to the Board of Education for Summer Learning 2016. Kevin is here. Kane is back with us this evening. Kevin, if you want to come forward, if there's additional questions that we want to ask or follow-up that we have from our last Board of Education meeting. Yep.
Are there any questions from the board? Go ahead, Kristen.
Kane, glad you're back, that you can talk about summer school with us. I just had a follow-up comment. We talked a little bit at our at our last meeting, you talked a little, we had just seen the presentation from Lincoln Junior High, and we talked a little bit about reading and some of the gaps that Lincoln Junior High was seeing in terms of reading achievement. And their answer was, when we asked about what they were working to try to do to try to address that, their answer was that they're really working to come up with reading material that's really interesting to the students. And I was just pondering that a little bit, and when I looked at the summer school curriculum, and it's just something that I just want to highlight again while you're here. I know you'll be talking about with the committee, that real, the hope that I think that those kinds of thoughts are a good idea, and for that summer school programming, because I was trying to think through what kinds of things someone might be interested in reading. You know, whether it's, you know, the dystopian, all that, is wildfire popular, that kind of thing, in terms of, you know, what would make a kid want to sign up for that, you know, in terms of, especially one that we really want. And we talked a little bit about the reading versus math. You've really augmented the math the math offerings and the science offerings. But just looking at those numbers, it seems as if, you know, even if we just rename the classes that we have, you know, the ones that we have in terms of that are at the different level, just to make them sound a little more interesting. It's just I had to bring it up again just because, you know, that reading part, it matters so much. And, you know, if I told my child, how about this, I would get a different reaction if it were something that sounded really cool. So that's the only thing I just wanted to mention again.
I know the naming of the courses, this is an ongoing challenge because we're also trying to communicate
What it is. Of course, of course.
And to the teachers and to the counselors, so we have an ongoing discussion about that. But I know the curriculum team with Jane in Learning Services has done a great job of building out the standards, but in their work is mapped out when they're going to identify the resources that are going to be appropriate. And I think that'll be a big part of their discussions, getting those resources. It's interesting, getting an uninspired reader to be inspired to read is a big challenge. But certainly I know the team that's working on it is very excited about what they're doing so far, so I know they'll do everything they can to get the right materials in place.
And communicate those cool materials through the.
And we have a great team of teachers from the buildings, which is the first time that's ever happened for summer school curriculum. So that we really believe they'll be the ambassadors back out into the buildings to tell the other teachers what great work is going on.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I was just going to add that part of the plan, because the teachers do feel very strongly about the exact same issues that you're bringing up, is that we have to communicate this also to all of our teachers and our counselors, so that not just the teachers that are developing it have the knowledge, but everyone else that's going to be talking with students about the summer opportunities, because they're very passionate. Like Kane said, they're a great group. They are very passionate about creating relevant, rigorous courses for our students, and we really have to do our due diligence in communicating that appropriately for our students and faculty.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, unfortunately, I was on a business trip last week, so I couldn't weigh in, but to piggyback on my colleagues' comments, you know, I looked at the junior high thing in particular, and, you know, as far as literacy goes, you have either what could be described as a remedial course or Shakespeare. You know, there's not much in between. And, you know, we all talk about the summer slump or loss or whatever the term is these days. And, you know, what I would just love to see is, you know, proceeding further on this journey to make the summer school an extension of the school year. Because every kid we can keep in school a couple hours of the day for an extra 6 weeks into the summer, or even 3 weeks, but 6 weeks would be even better, would be fantastic. And I think it will have to be something that is more holistic. It's basically an extension of the junior high day, includes literacy, but maybe some math and math games, maybe some technology, some field trips. But get as many kids as possible into an academic environment, a couple hours a day. I think if it's packaged correctly, it'll be worthwhile for the kids, it'll be interesting for the kids, and the parents will jump on it too. But it's part of an evolving philosophy. I understand that, but I can't emphasize enough how much I'd love to see us expand that and make it, you know, maybe even less directed and more holistically academic and cover more areas and just try to get that average student or kids that need a little bit of a push, but get them excited about, I know it sounds weird, but get them excited about going to school for an extra month in the summer. And I think we can do that.
I think we're putting the pieces in place to do that, so it's not just reading for 4 hours or just math
Right.
for 4 hours, but they put different things. They get some of what they need in one instance and some extension in other instances, and so they feel that it is more holistic and not just kind of doing one thing for 4 hours in order to catch up or get
Yep.
ahead or whatever.
Any other questions from this side? Donna, you had a question?
Yep, I'm so excited about all the progress that we've made with summer school. Kind of a detailed question, but from our presentation last time for Blueprint 1.16E, it said that we were going to implement a plan to leverage community resources. And then I didn't really hear much about that, so I was just wondering if you could speak to what we're referring to in that regard.
In the blueprint, that's really a reference mostly to our work with the Park District that we've built on from the first year to the second year to have, camp available for kids who, when they're done with summer school, can go right into that, especially for families who can't pick up their kids in the middle of the day. That's actually an experience they get where they get some of the things you're talking about. We haven't done this yet, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but that would be something we would look to potentially, depending on how junior high went, to extend that if they had programs that were appropriate for kids that age. They find that that's a harder age to program for because some of those kids can go home and go off and do other things. But going forward, that's somebody we would continue to look to partner with. Other pieces that we work on kind of separately from summer school is the summer internship piece. And we explicitly look to summer internships because we find that the kids just can't fit it in during the year. And so we really work with partners like we did Naperville Township, City of Naperville, R.R. Donnelly this past summer to work to put those in place. And it was in that blueprint, but it's also really coming out of Julie's office and with the ICs at the high school.
So that second part is really what I was looking at hearing, and I'm excited about that as well. So thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board?
Abby, do you have any thoughts? Did you ever take a summer school class? I took dynamic earth science over the summer going into freshman year because I wanted to get ahead in science because I wanted to take bio. So I took bio freshman year.
I did not tell you to say that.
I'm so glad it's gone. So it needed to be. It needed to be.
Just one note, Mr. Bridges, the dates that are on there will be changed due to when we assign some floaters, some holidays around July 4th and when things are open or closed. So just so you know, the registration materials will be updated appropriately. So if you see some difference, you'll know that's the case. That's the reason.
And if I could ask one last question, what are your plans? We talked about this 6 months ago, whenever it was, to incorporate this more into the overall registration process, especially for high school.
Actually, tomorrow morning, we'll be pressing the button on the registration materials, so there will be an insert in the high school registration book that they get. Right now, ELO actually has its own page,
right.
Timing-wise. The way our timeline works, we can't really get it in the book, but we can get it in an insert. So it's there when they open the book, and the counselors know about it. And we're going to be looking to make some visits to building meetings in December to talk directly to faculty about the changes that we're making, kind of a quick song and dance to get it out there and make sure they're aware and know what we're doing that's different so that they can get on board earlier.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Very good. Okay. Please have a motion to approve item 10.01 summer school.
I'll make a motion to approve item 10.01 summer school 2016.
Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second for item 10.01 summer school 2016. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Fielden,
Yes.
Price,
Yes.
Wanke,
Yes.
Yench,
Aye.
Fitzgerald,
Aye.
Crotty,
Yes.
Motion carries. Item 10.02, contract for the bridge.
At
alternative
our
program.
November 2nd Board of Education meeting, Dr. Christine Igo, our Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, and her team presented an update and recommendation to the Board of Education. First, an update on the program at the bridge and a recommendation for renewal of our contract. Thank you, Kevin. I forgot to thank you before I moved on for being here. And so with that, we'll take questions that the board has regarding that presentation recommendation.
Any questions on the Abraxas agreement?
I
Mike?
have a question from last time. I thought we were, I had asked about like average daily attendance.
One second.
Yes, I certainly have that for you. Just a second. Over the last year, our average daily attendance for our ALAP students was 17.44 days. Would you like me to do all 3 years? Or the following year was 14.3 days?
Will you explain what that number is for the board?
Certainly. So the average daily attendance is we take all of the days that the students are in attendance and divide that by the total number of days within the year or within that month, and then we average that out to get a sense of how often the attendance is for that day, our average daily attendance.
So we can look at attendance in a different way too. Currently, we have 18 students who are there as alternative learning opportunities. 2 of them are there in lieu of a recommendation for expulsion, and there are 17 special education students that are currently there receiving special education services. In 2012, we have an average, our monthly average of attendance was 42. 2013, 2014 was 37. 2014, 2015 was 43. We usually start low, and that number increases over the course of the year with an average of about 41. And we've been as high as 47 in a given month. So I don't know if that answers your question a little differently.
And we have 50 seats there, correct? 20 for ALP and 30 for ALOP and 20 for special needs, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen?
But we pay the cost per day based on students who are placed there, correct? It's just we have a reservation for 50, correct?
Oh, you pay for all 50.
We pay for all 50.
All the time.
Correct.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, because that's why it would have been my question. And, you know, if we're bumping up on 47, you know, it'd be tough to come down a lot on that, even though my related question is, not everybody in the community might be aware of it. Certainly everybody in this room is. Senate Bill 100 is taking effect next year, which seriously cuts back on out-of-school placements, or potentially cuts back on out-of-school placements. It puts a lot of state restrictions on what we can do. Do you see that significantly affecting our numbers in the future?
I'll start there. I'm not sure yet. We have a team of staff that will be attending a briefing in January from one of our legal counsel to provide input on the impact of Senate Bill 100. It has the potential to, because there are some limitations on the length of disciplinary removals to alternative schools. But let's remember that we place kids there for other things besides the discipline issues. We have the number of students that are there for special education, but then also those students that are just not finding success in the regular education school setting. The contract that we have brought forward to you is different than previous contracts in that it's a 2-year contract with an option for a 3rd year. So I think that'll give us a year to really evaluate if there is a significant input and if that number either has to come down or there are other potential ways to serve the kids.
Thank you.
But currently you feel like 50 is the right number?
Yeah, again, my reaction is the same as that Mr. Yench's was, that 47 is bumping up there. Yep. I should point out, I meant to mention Mike Blucharczyk. Mark, I can't ever say your last name, I'm sorry, from Abraxas is with us this evening as well.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. May I please have a motion to approve the contract?
I move approval of the contract for Bridge Alternative Program.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve item 10.02, the contract for the Bridge Alternative Program as presented. Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Wonky,
Yes.
Crotty,
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Yench.
Aye.
Price.
Yes.
Fielden.
Yes. Motion carries. Item 10.03, several policies from Section 6.
We did have some questions that came in on those, so why don't we go through each policy by policy, and then act as we'd like. Let's start with 630. Any questions or follow-up on that one, Kane?
I didn't get any questions around 630 particularly. This is just revised the sections to reflect organization of schools around basic principles
Okay.
In the district.
Any new questions on 630? Okay. How about 665?
665, this is just a cross-reference section. There's no change to the text.
Any new questions on 6120?
No new questions on 6120. Again, it was a statutory cross-reference inclusion.
6140?
There was a question on 6140 because the text, it's a new policy, refers to the McKinney Homeless Act, and we typically call it the McKinney-Vento Act. Press, I went back and checked Press again. They do call it the McKinney Homeless Act still. I don't think it's incorrect. We can certainly change that for revision if we want. It's not an incorrect reference. It's just a less specific reference.
Well, it's what Congress calls it. So.
Exactly. It probably has to do with the underlying statute as opposed to the
Yeah,
bill.
and I mean, there's a history for it, but
Yep.
currently on the books, it's the McKinney-Vento
I think that's what we
Act.
commonly refer to it as. So if the board's comfortable, we'll ask for action tonight, contingent upon the modification to include the full title of the act. 6170?
6170 just changes the word equality to equity and makes some cross-reference policy name changes. No questions were given on that one.
Did have questions on 6200, which is being recommended to 6202?
Correct. That's on class size. It was 6200 under us, and it's being changed to 6202 just to align with the proper numbering.
So, yeah, here's a thought I have based on some of the questions that have come in. This seems like it's going to be more of a bigger philosophical conversation. My suggestion would be that we pull that for conversation this evening and schedule a time when we really maybe have a full board and have the opportunity, because based on kind of where that conversation goes, that could really impact some operations moving forward. So my suggestion, we pull that for now, and let's put it back on for full discussion on kind of philosophically where we are. 6200 class size, which is recommended to be 6202, because it's not a press policy, it's a customized policy.
So you want us to discuss it now, or you want us to discuss it
I
in the
suggest we
future?
make it a separate agenda item so that we can have that conversation at a future meeting. So we would not ask for action on that.
Okay.
If you're comfortable with that.
Yep.
We at our last board meeting, we did have questions on 6214. We have proposed legislation, proposed language to insert on this. We did check with music instructors, and so 6140, there are at time, or 6214, there are at times that other instruments are also provided. So, Kane, if you want to.
Yeah, I apologize for not getting this in time, but we would just recommend simply an inclusion of language that says at the discretion of the superintendent or designee, the district may purchase specialized instruments not included in the above list if deemed necessary. That way we're not tied to the list indefinitely. Okay?
Yeah. Yep. So something like we would do with the earlier, with 6140, we'd recommend action tonight with the insertion of that language. Comfortable with that?
And just to be clear, it's going to be 6212 now.
It'll be correct.
I'm sorry,
I'm
yes,
sorry,
it will
yes,
be
I'm
6212.
sorry.
That's a renumbering.
Good with that?
Okay.
6230, any other questions on that one?
I did not receive any questions on 6230 about the library resource program.
In 6260, we had a suggestion on
A suggestion to align with the language in 8110 about public suggestions and concerns. Just to note that this is really about actual objections to curriculum, formal objections that follow a process seeking an exemption for a child. So I don't know if it would be really public suggestions and concerns would be the appropriate language for this, because it's a process seeking an exemption from something. Certainly, this language comes from press, I believe, and also an appropriate renaming would be objections to curriculum, instructional materials, and programs if we were going to change the title.
And which one does press recommend, the complaints or the objections?
Complaints.
complaints.
It's just, I know the when we had the,
Yes.
because we used to call, which one, 8.110, but it had some similar
Yes.
negative verbiage, and we decided, let's.
And with 8110, it wasn't a process where you were seeking an action that would relate to teaching, learning, or actual materials. You were just lodging basically a statement that you had a concern about it or making a suggestion to change it. This is about actually exempting your child from it, so.
Fair enough. No, that's fine.
Okay, as is then?
We'll leave it
I
as
see
is.
the difference, yeah.
I mean, you could say,
Okay.
you could say concerns. That might be a little bit less, I don't know. It's thought.
I think when.
My recommendation is as long as if it gets it, I'd prefer to stay with it, to stay consistent with press recommendations. Yeah.
It does when we get the updates, then we'll know when they make reference to this update, we'll be sure we're on the right page.
And then we did have a number of questions that came in on 6300.
Yeah, 6300, I'll be honest, I would propose that we put this off one more to make some changes related to AP Computer Science and some other references. There was a question why the civics was not included in here. 660, which we've also held off on, is on curriculum content. The press recommendation on 660, which we held off on, literally makes a reference to the law that's currently waiting to be signed, and it says, do this unless this happens, and we just thought it would be simply better and cleaner to wait until the law is signed.
Happens, right.
That happens to see. And that law is important because it's an important amendment because it says not only will the civics roll out in 2016-17, but it'll only start with 9th graders rolling up. If we adopt it the way it is right now, we just have to change it or basically say that every student starting in 16-17 has to have the civics credit, which they might or might not have. And so I think it's appropriate that we wait for the civics and language inclusion until that law has been signed, or it's clear that it's not going to be signed, and then make a decision. We are confident that we have the requirements met, but that doesn't mean every student next year will be able to take that course. So that's why we didn't put that in there. I will, though, suggest that we put this off one more meeting and I come back with a couple revisions related to AP Computer Science and some other requirements.
Now, that bill is on the governor's desk, is what I understand.
Correct.
Right.
And normally it would be signed 30 days, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, so that could actually be done in a relatively near term.
We could be bringing this back very shortly.
You know, my further point is on those other things you mentioned, I just think we should try to align to the actual school code as much as possible, because most of our verbiage in there was left over from the 96 version, and it's changed 3 times since then.
Yeah, I know there's the issue of like the writing intensive courses, which I know our language arts courses, our English courses, our comm arts courses meet, and depending on where you go, you're going to call it, one thing.
Well, and it's the requirement for that one section of either fine arts or language or vocational skills.
And that's one of the things actually I want to review because we
concur.
do meet that requirement.
Oh, I know we meet all the requirements. I just think our policies should reflect the law and what we actually do.
Right, and that's something I'd like to review with Learning Services, because the way I read that, I thought it clearly did align to the law, so I didn't know if you wanted to invoke the law or not necessarily, but if you look at our credits for those areas, that's still clearly aligned to the law.
Yes. Okay. I mean, if you followed our rules right now, our policy right now is more restrictive than the law.
Okay, I see.
That's the problem. Because
Duly
it's old guidance.
Correct. Okay.
So we'll review it and clean it up. So for a recommendation, then, if there are no other questions, it would a motion could sound. A motion would be like this: a motion to approve policy 630, 665, 6120, 6170, 6230, 6260 as presented, and 6140, 6212 as modified.
So moved.
Oh, there we go. See? I know, he was totally taking notes. He had it all down.
Okay, we have a motion and a second based on the agreements here reached for some adjustments. Get a roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Crotty? Yes. Fitzgerald?
Aye.
Wonky?
Yes.
Yench?
Aye.
Price?
Yes.
Fielden?
Yes. Motion carries.
And then we'll discuss 6200/202 and 6300 at a future meeting.
Correct.
Okay, finally, last two items on the agenda, the board meeting minutes, and they're separated because we had a couple of absences at one meeting. So can I have a motion for approving the board meeting minutes for October 19th, 2015?
So moved. Second?
A motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Waukee.
Yes.
Prati.
Yes.
Yench.
Aye.
Fielden.
Yes.
Price.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I move approval of board meeting minutes for 2nd November 2015.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments? Roll call, please, Ms. Bell.
Yench.
Abstain.
Price.
Yes.
Fitzgerald.
Aye.
Fielden.
Abstain.
Prati.
Yes.
Donna.
Donna?
Oh, Waukee.
Yes.
Motion carries. And that's all the items for discussion with action. Any new business? Old business? Upcoming scheduled events. I have NEF breakfast coming up on December 3rd, always a good time. And the Mayor's Community Breakfast on December 4th.
And I would just highlight that Mrs. Bell has added into the calendar the remainder of the year. So it goes all the way through the year. You can begin to plan ahead and look forward. So thank you, Mrs. Bell.
Thank you, Ms. Bell.
Very good. All right. One more motion for the night. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We are adjourned.
Bye, Donna. Take care, Norm.
Bye, thank you.